When you think of the Oscars, you think of the steps down the red carpet and up to the stage.
Whoever we forgot, we love you.
Thank you so much. You rarely think of the steps they had to take to get there. The journey. Tonight, for the first time, this year's Oscar nominees take you back to their beginnings.
My mom couldn't afford even a Happy Meal.
They faced overwhelming obstacles.
And I thought it was an enormous failure.
Stared down their fears.
There was no retreat. This was the Alamo.
And discovered what matters most.
I'm learning a ton every day I'm with him. For me, that's the rush.
Join us tonight for a special edition of 2020, Journey to the Oscars. Welcome, everyone, to Journey to the Oscars. I'm Robin Roberts. Tonight, we're going to give you an insider's take on the most competitive categories, and we'll also discuss the controversy concerning the lack of diversity among this year's nominees. That's later. But first, we have some stories to tell. When you think of Sylvester Stallone, you think movie star, right? Yeah, action hero, and of course, Rocky Balboa. You might not think artist, painter, and writer, but he's all three of those. Sylvester Stallone's big break came about through the sheer power of his imagination when he hatched the idea that not only launched his career, but began the 40-year saga that we still can't get enough of. Let's start from the beginning. Was there ever a time that you doubted yourself?
Yeah, I thought when I lived in basically this flop house. It's $26 a week, very transient, and you share the floor with 10 people. You don't know anybody on the planet, literally no one.
I think I recall you saying your acting low point, The Godfather, and you said you couldn't even get in the...
I couldn't even get cast as an Italian. I'll never forget where there's a party scene. There's 300 guests. I said, no. I go, what part of me didn't make past the Italian identification aspect? They go, I don't know, you just don't fit in. Wow. God's telling me something.
That's got to play with your psyche a little bit.
A little bit.
I know.
Yeah.
But it didn't. And you decided to take matters into your own hands by writing Rocky.
You know, I've been coming in for 6 years. The 6 years you've been sticking it to me. I want to know how come.
You want to know?
I want to know how.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Because you had the talent to become a good fighter. And instead of that, you became a leg breaker.
You were able to write Rocky in 3.5 days. The movie that went on to be Best Picture, you wrote in 3.5 days?
Yes.
Was it just flowing out of you?
The way it was. I knew that this was going to be very flawed, but if I could get from the beginning to the end with some semblance of a character, then I'll repair the rest along the way.
And you want to star in it. And you're told, no, you were even offered $250,000.
360.
360. You're a struggling actor.
Ooh.
You can't make ends meet. You're getting offered all this money, but you didn't take it.
No. I just didn't understand how the rules of life were played at that point. But this character, I understood.
To say that Rocky touched a nerve would be an understatement. In the 1980s, Rocky epitomized America's attitude and self-image, and the character continued to evolve in the new millennium, reappearing every few years to reflect America's changing hopes, fears, and dreams, until finally, it appeared that the journey was at an end. The last Rocky movie before Creed, the final scene, was it your way of saying goodbye to the character, goodbye to that?
Yeah, goodbye to everything, goodbye to the best chapters of my life, at least professional life, it really was. Then along comes this young guy out of Oakland. I'm going, what?
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler.
When director Ryan Coogler first met with Stallone, he was untested as a feature filmmaker, but he had an intensely personal idea for reviving the Rocky franchise. Coogler's father had fallen gravely ill a few years earlier. With Ryan by his side, there was only one thing the elder Coogler wanted to watch.
The father's a very soulful, powerful man, and now he's being reduced to a shell of his former self. But oddly, he watches Rocky again and again and again. And his son, who loves his father, sitting right beside him, he's watching his father disintegrate before his very eyes. The traumatic impact was so imprinted on this young man that he never got over it. So he comes to me and goes, hey, look at this great idea. We're gonna, revive Rocky. I go, how? And when he told me the story, I said, this is insane, wrong. You're a young kid. You haven't done anything yet, but I appreciate the thought. He goes, okay, see you around. And he goes out and he does a masterpiece, Fruitvale Station, wins the Cannes Film Festival. Every studio wants him. What's he want to do? Creed. I went, now either this guy here is just trying my patience, or reminds me of a guy I used to know.
I was going to say, that was you 40 years ago.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely. Then I realized this is not a movie for him. It's for his father. This is all about a love letter to his father.
Now, if you really dug down deep and asked a real Rocky fan why he likes the movies, it's usually because they watch them with someone that they love. What's so great about them is they're so personal to people. People just associate them with their family.
He writes me the role of a lifetime. And then he has Michael B. Jordan, who's also brilliant. And I'm now pulled along, tugged out by the present generation, a character that could be their grandfather.
What you mean don't think about this when you start in treatment?
I'm not doing no chemotherapy. I'm not crazy at all. If I could take everything that was good and put it into a bowl or something and say, hey, here, I'd like to buy one more day with my wife, I'd do it. Everything I got is moved on, and I'm here. I never wanted to do this movie. I thought Sick Rocky is so counterintuitive to what Rocky really is designed for. I just laid there. I said, can someone else be sick in the movie and not me? Because I've never done that. My wife goes, you're a coward. No, it's kind of a harsh word. He goes, no, it's you're yellow, basically. You're a coward. It goes against every undeclared artistic rule. If you're afraid of something, that's the commitment of the artist. That's his duty, to pursue the unknown, to go someplace where he's literally at odds with himself.
Right there, old man?
Yeah. If you look hard enough, you can see your whole life from up here.
How does it look?
Not bad at all. And once I just gave up and realized this movie belongs to Michael B. Jordan, he's the youth, he's the engine. You're the caboose. I am Burgess Meredith. I am wisdom. I am experience.
What do you remember from the Oscars 40 years ago?
I remember driving up to the Oscars, and I had a rented tux, and it wasn't fitting very well, and the tie was a little loose in it, and I was adjusting it, and it went sprung, and it broke. The driver goes, hey, don't worry about it, you can borrow mine. I said, no. So I take it and I put my collar out, which at that time was disco fever, and I go in, and people are looking at me as though, this is blasphemous. Now, what is going on? Is it like my cologne? I had no idea. And it was just naivete. I didn't think we were going to win. We were up against extraordinary works of cinematic filmmaking, on every level.
The films nominated for the Academy Award this year are All the President's Men, Network, Rocky, Taxi Driver, and the winner is Rocky.
What I remember most from the Oscars, how wide-eyed you were.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, you had to be dragged up there. You didn't want to go up.
They brought me on stage, and I went, oh, no. So tight. Here we go.
Sylvester Stallone, I'd like to thank you for sharing your dream of Rocky with us and for giving a performance that has enriched all our lives.
To all the Rockies in the world, I love you.
When you said, this is for all the Rockies.
This is all the Rockies in the world, yeah.
Who do you think are all the Rockies in the world?
We're all Rockies, in a sense. We all have this struggle to try to realize our dream, which is trying to be appreciated in their own lifetime, to say, you know what, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the prettiest, I'm not the tallest, but I'd just like to take a shot at it one time, and then I'll know. You taught me how to fight again. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna fight this thing, but if I fight, I want you to fight too. Even in my own life, you realize that my ship is come and gone. My sunset is halfway down. I'm really paying attention. Like this, right now, I'm photographing this in my mind. This is a really special moment in my life. Because there's not that many moments left, they're really getting very special, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm gonna hang this one on the wall.
Thank you for sharing this moment with us. Thank you. Coming up, Matt Damon, Ridley Scott, Bryan Cranston, our take on diversity and the Oscars. And up next, Hollywood's new it girl, Brie Larson.
As far as how I came from single mom who was a waitress, we were on food stamps, to how am I here now?
I was really seriously considering leaving acting. And my mom called me and she said, I will never speak to you again if you turn your back on this. It gave me that one little bit of a nudge.
I was always sort of shy, but I always loved acting. I was naive enough to think that's just what you did when you grew up.
I didn't get into theatre school at that point. I questioned that I might go another direction, but then I dared to believe that I would at least give it a few more years to try.
In the intensely powerful film Room, a young mother is held captive with her 5-year-old son in a garden shed.
Show some stretch.
It's the only world her son has ever known. The mother is played by a remarkable young actress named Brie Larson, whose career has been forever changed with this performance.
The world is so big. is so big you wouldn't even believe it. And room is just one stinky part of it.
Room's not stinky. I don't believe in your stinky world.
As a young girl, Bree moved to Los Angeles with her newly single mother, and they shared a cramped studio apartment. Bree would draw upon her mom's experience for her character in Room, a young mother fiercely protecting her child.
What I forgot up until recently was waking up in the middle of the night with me and my sister, my mom, all in the same bed. Hearing my mom like covering her mouth, sobbing, trying to not make a sound for us to hear. It wasn't until I was prepping Room where I realized that moment was the only crack. Thinking my kids are asleep, I can release, because where else is she gonna go? My mom was struggling while being in a very small space with 2 children and being sure to not put any of it on us. You realize how hard she tried, and you see it from this perspective that you couldn't as a kid. So we lived in a studio apartment. There's a room with a bed that came out of the wall, and my mom couldn't afford even a Happy Meal. We ate top ramen. I had no toys, and I had like 2 shirts and like a pair of jeans, and that was it. But I had my mom all to myself, and I remember it being the coolest period of time. I was really, really shy, painfully shy. So the idea of me wanting to do something that's extremely extroverted just seemed bizarre and unnatural. Being an actor hasn't been easy. You're given mostly no's. There's like these sayings that like, just keep on going, it's just around the corner. And I just felt like I was like, this is the longest block ever. It's like 20 years walking on one block, waiting for that corner to turn.
While successful as a supporting player in both TV and film, Bree was still searching for that role that would show her true talents. And then she read the screenplay for a small independent film called Room, and something inside her clicked.
Good morning, wardrobe. Good morning, TV. Good morning, sink.
You're 5 now? You're 5 and you're old enough to understand what the world is. You have to understand. You have to understand. We can't keep living like this. You need to help me.
The character allowed her to create an homage to her own mother and to connect more deeply with her co-star.
This is a mothering role. I had to really create a sense of companionship with this boy. How could you not want to just give everything you have to that brilliant little kid? He's the best. And I felt so much responsibility. I knew from being an actor at the same age Jake was and how badly I really wanted to be respected and I wanted to do a good job. And I saw that in Jake right away. I knew that he was in it for real. I understood that he wanted to be respected, and so I was always going to make sure that he felt like a creative force. You saved me.
Are you better now?
Yeah, I'm starting to be. Room was really making it all about him, like making it about his experience, and it allowed me to really feel Ma in a deeper way. We were doing the escape sequence. I always saw it as like what's on the page. Like it's a mom giving up her son. She thinks that he's gonna be okay, but she's gonna die. I always assumed that it was about that. When we started doing it, and I would remember just holding on to Jacob in that rug, and I felt this just like gut-wrenching feeling of not wanting it to go. And I realized that that was me letting go of a 7-year-old. That's me letting go of my inner child and letting go of that girl and not knowing if I'm gonna get it back.
Bree's breakthrough resulted in the most powerful performance of her career and gave her closure with the little girl she used to be.
It's such a powerful metaphor for me now, and it trips me out that this movie is the thing that's given me that experience.
Say bye-bye to Room.
It's saying goodbye to the 7-year-old that was in the studio apartment that was blissfully unaware and also so hopeful of what was going to happen. Saying goodbye to my old normal. Ma has to commit to living in a bigger, more complicated world, and that's what I have to do as well. You're gonna love it.
What?
The world.
Coming up next, Bryan Cranston. and Matt Damon's 50 million mile journey from Mars to the Oscars.
We had to do a sex scene, and I was really nervous about it because I've never done one. It's a terribly uncomfortable thing. And she pulled me outside, and I was like, oh, this is the worst. I go, have you ever done one of these before? And she said, only one with George Clooney. Didn't help.
Welcome back to a special edition of 2020. Let's continue now with an actor whose journey to his first nomination has taken him decades, Bryan Cranston, but he'd be the first one to tell you it has been more than worth the wait.
Hello. I didn't know you dying here.
Oh,
how are you?
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sid, this is your hood.
It is. I know. I lived right around the corner.
It has to be humbling to come back here. You're back here as Oscar-nominated Bryan Cranston.
That life is about as far away from the boy who was raised in this area as you can get. I was not raised with the idea that you could achieve that.
He grew up here in the Los Angeles suburb of Canoga Park. The town's blue-collar work ethic would inform his own.
There was a duality to my childhood. When I was raised in Canoga Park up until the age of 10, life seemed pretty normal. It was a kind of a typical suburban life. My dad was an actor, and he made his living getting a job here, getting a job there, sometimes doing fairly well, at other times not so well. One year we had a pool put into our backyard, and I remember a year later or so, my mother saying, we can't swim this summer because we can't afford the chemicals to go in the pool. So that was interesting, that up and down life.
Do you remember that first time seeing him on the screen?
Yeah.
The locusts are everywhere.
He was an army guy. He's up on top of a building saying, no, the Sector 7 looks fine here.
They're moving toward your location.
And then behind him we see this large grasshopper coming up behind him, and we just hear, oh, there goes Dad, he just died.
Bryan walked to his elementary school every day.
So this is the auditorium.
And it was here he decided to walk in his father's footsteps. His first performance would be a memorable one, but painfully so. You're like this, about this tall, so everything seems really big.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to say...
President Lincoln will finish writing the Gettysburg Address when he returns to the White House. And instead, I said, President Lincoln will finish writing the Gettysburg Address when he returns from the White Front, which was this department store, this chain of department stores all throughout Southern California. And everybody cracked up. Everybody was laughing. And I thought it was an enormous failure. But later on, I realized the power. I mistakenly misplaced one word, and that did this.
And just one word.
One word.
Bryan's rough moment on stage passed fairly quickly, but he faced deeper stresses at home, where his parents struggled to keep their family together.
Around 10-11, my father and mother came to an impasse and split up. Unfortunately, my father left the family, and I didn't see him from the time I was 12 to the time I was 22.
Bryan initially considered becoming a police officer, but the pull of the stage was too strong. In junior college, he enrolled in an acting class.
The first line says, teenage boy and girl are making out on a park bench. Oh my God. I look at the girl, she's really cute. We were called up, and I sat on a bench, and she sat on a bench, and I had the first line, and I put my sides down on the floor, and before I could turn, she's onto me. She's kissing me, and I'm leaning back and kissing me a tongue and hands, and she straddles my leg and kissing, and it's like, oh my God. So at a break, I come up to her. I'm gonna ask her out, and she looked at me like I was a lost puppy.
You didn't realize she was acting?
I completely believed her. The power that she exuded at that time as a person, as an actor, was immense. And it just blew me back. By the age of 25, I never looked back.
You expect a hemorrhoid medicine?
During the 80s and 90s, Brian was the ultimate journeyman, appearing in dozens of television shows and commercials. But unlike his father, he considered himself blessed simply to be a working actor.
Your father wanted to be successful. He wanted to be a star. That did not happen for him. Did that break him?
I think it did. I think that his ego was inflated to the point where he felt that was what was important. As long as you find something that you enjoy doing and love to do, then it doesn't really matter where that takes you because you're in love.
Mr. White?
Yes.
You understood what I've just said to you?
Yes. Lung cancer. Inoperable. Walter White is the reason that I was able to become Dalton Trumbo.
Brian's portrayal of Walter White, the science teacher turned meth kingpin, was one of the crowning achievements of modern television. But Brian never would have been cast without the advocacy of the show's creator.
Vince Gilligan was my champion because the network and studio, they were like, well, wait a minute, you're talking about Walter White being played by the silly dad from Malcolm in the Middle, and Vince, to his great credit and my benefit, said he's an actor. This is what he does. You know, he can do this.
A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
From then on, he's had his pick of projects, winning a Tony for his performance as President Lyndon Johnson in All the Way. And now, although Brian never sought it, he has arrived at the place his father always coveted. He is an Oscar-nominated movie star for his performance as blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo.
Trumbo, we can't afford you.
All right. I'll write you a movie for $1,200 then.
And you don't want your name on it.
No, you don't want my name on it.
We should be able to embrace someone's different culture, different ideals, and not take someone's point of view that differs from ours as a threat to my own point of view, but to be intrigued by it.
Whisper a movie you've written in secret. Maybe I've even heard of it.
Maybe you have.
At this point in your career, as opposed to early on in your 20s, getting the recognition, what does that mean to you now?
I think that it came to me at the right time. I think I'm mature enough to be able to accept this life. And at some point on this wonderful thrill ride of a roller coaster that I'm on, it's going to pull into the station again, stop, and that bar will lean up, and I'll be asked to step out. And I think I'll do it gladly. It's like, okay. And I'll look at the next person and have a great ride. Go on, take it. Have fun.
Coming up, Matt Damon, Ridley Scott, and our look at the Oscars diversity issue when this special edition of 2020 continues.
My grandmother, who loved movies, knew that I was kind of a night owl. I'd sneak down to watch movies with her on the couch. I'm watching this movie and I see this incredible, charismatic actor.
Where you fancy first, fella? What's your sister, a deep sea diver?
I want to do that. What is he doing? What I was watching was Streetcar Named Desire, and that was Marlon Brando. And that's where the acting bug started.
At the Academy Awards, we celebrate great stories. But there's another story taking center stage this year. None of this year's nominated actors and actresses are people of color. We're talking zero. So tonight, as we focus on the remarkable journeys of our nominees, we also take a look at the journey of the Oscars themselves.
To me, it seems no more than just a plaque of gold. It opens the doors of this room, and it enables us to embrace the whole of America.
Years before Jackie Robinson, decades before Martin Luther King Jr., Hattie McDaniel became the first African-American to win an Oscar.
My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you and God bless you.
The Oscars seem to be on the cutting edge of racial equality. But over the next 50 years, only 3 more actors of color won Oscars, until Whoopi Goldberg's win for Ghost.
I had heard people talk about how long it had been between Hattie McDaniel and another black woman. I was kind of shocked by that.
Thank you so much.
But the difference between my win and another woman is much shorter time.
And the Oscar goes to Halle Berry in Monsters Ball.
Halle Berry was the first African-American to win Best Leading Actress.
This moment is for every nameless, faceless woman of color that now has a chance because his door tonight has been opened.
After that moment, especially with Denzel Washington winning Best Actor that same night,
2 birds with 1 night, huh?
many people believed that real racial equality had finally arrived at the Oscars. Between that moment and this one, 7 other actors of color won Oscars. But now, for the second year in a row, not even a single nominee. With a viral hashtag and several high-profile celebrities and directors choosing to skip the event, people are taking a deeper look, not just at the Oscars, but at Hollywood.
When I host the Academy Awards, the same thing happened. People say, well, we got to boycott it because there's, no folks of color. You can fill the Academy with all black folks, all Asian, Latino and stuff, and if you don't put folks in the movies that are the caliber that they should be, you're going to have the same issue.
If our industry is not open enough to be able to look at ourselves and find the flaws, then we're not very strong.
Perhaps this zero nomination moment is necessary to begin creating real and lasting change. Immediately after the nominations were announced, the Academy did adopt a series of changes to the voting and membership process. We will see how effective those changes prove to be. Coming up on Journey to the Oscars, you may think The Martian put you through the emotional ringer.
We knew we needed a moment where Mark's armor cracks.
Thanks for coming back for me.
Well, we're on it.
But Matt Damon's collaboration with producer and director Ridley Scott is an emotional story in and of itself.
Oh my God, I have not been asked that question.
I love that you're asking me this because my wife has brought this up many times.
I think the toilet is a wonderful place to practice just about anything. I'm a big fan of that as a rehearsal room space.
I never, ever practiced an Oscar speech.
I have in the past. I've written them. This year, I'm not going to prepare anything. To really be able to speak from my heart in that moment, I think that would be a pretty courageous thing to try and do.
To memorize anything, I just stand in the shower and scream.
Matt Damon is nominated this year for Best Actor, and Sir Ridley Scott produced and directed this year's Best Picture nominee, The Martian. They had never worked together before this film, but when they finally did, it was out of this world.
Everyone's had a crack at playing the guitar, but when Jimi Hendrix played the guitar, you knew it was Jimi Hendrix, right? And when Ridley Scott is being completely simple and completely honest, you know it's Ridley Scott's frame.
There's an innocence to Matt. I think that's what makes him fresh.
We all expected the amazing visuals. We expected the great action sequences. But none of us expected The Martian to become Hollywood's perfect storm of 2015. A $600 million grossing blockbuster that struck an emotional chord around the world.
I got him!
The story of The Martian is surprisingly an intensely personal story, one that could only have been told at this moment by these two men, Ridley Scott and Matt Damon.
When I first read the script, I thought, well, this is a challenge because, you're by yourself. All of that risk is kind of mitigated by a master standing next to you the entire time, Had it not been Ridley, I wouldn't have done the movie.
I storyboard everything. And by doing it, you're literally shooting the film on paper in your head first. I got to sit down by myself and think it through quietly, a bit like a writer, what touches me, what gets to me.
For nearly 40 years, Ridley Scott has followed the same daily ritual of sitting down in his study and drawing the pictures that came into his head. The resulting storyboards have become the launching pads for some of the most memorable worlds in cinema history. From the depths of outer space in Alien, to the arenas of ancient Rome in Gladiator, to the American West of Thelma and Louise.
Actors, our one excuse for not being good in a movie is that we don't know what movie we're in. What Ridley does is he absolutely arms you with all of this information. So you not only know what movie you're in, you know what lens size you're on, you know what shot he's cutting from and what shot he's cutting to. All of that makes your job much, much easier.
Ridley's method springs from his training as a painter at London's Royal College of Art. His first film marked the beginning of his lifelong creative partnership with his brother, Tony Scott. That's Tony on the bike.
Tony was his best friend. They were very, 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 very close. There was a profound bond between them. My dad was, in some ways, Tony's protector and guide.
Tony would become a director and producer as well. Together they created Scott Free, one of the most successful production companies in Hollywood.
I knew that I wanted blood in that company. I knew Tony had it in him, and he flew eventually.
Ridley and Tony Scott produced a staggering 157 films and television shows, ranging from Top Gun and Crimson Tide to Black Hawk Down and American Gangster. But in 2012, the unimaginable happened. With their company at the height of its powers, Tony Scott took his own life at the age of 68. Tony's death was the darkest moment of Ridley's life, but in the darkness, he worked his way toward the light.
I always learned if you sit at a problem long enough, there's always a solution. You just got to keep going at it.
He turned to the process that had been his creative bedrock. He sat down in his study and drew the pictures that came into his head. He could have told the story of an alien or a gladiator, but instead, finding his inspiration in the screenplay for The Martian, Ridley saw the story of a man much like himself, a man facing the abyss, who somehow, step by step, found a way to survive.
At some point, everything's going to go south on you. Everything's going to go south, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Now, you can either accept that, or you can get to work.
The methodology of what he is doing and how he does it is exactly as my father would do it. If my dad was stranded on Mars, he would work it out.
You just begin. You do the math. You solve one problem, then you solve the next one, and then the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home.
And The Martian's got Tony in it. The way Matt's character blows himself up. Tony was the most accident-prone person. He's always like drive his motorcycle through the back of the garage. That's Tony.
Sir Ridley Scott infused the set of The Martian with his brother's buoyant spirit. He attracted A-listers and Oscar nominees to fill out his cast and oversaw every detail of the massive production. And for Matt Damon, whose character was forced to spend nearly the entire movie alone, Ridley was with him every step of the way.
In the pre-production, we went through the script starting on page 1 and just went through every single moment.
He and I talk technically. Emotion, sun emotion, humor. This is funny, that's funny. Tears here, maybe.
We knew we needed a moment where Mark's armor cracks.
About 2 minutes, Waddy. How you doing down there?
I'm good. I'm anxious to get up to you. Thanks for coming back for me. The other actors had already wrapped. They'd gone home. So it was just Ridley and I in Budapest shooting that scene. And as we started to do the scene, Ridley did something kind of tricky. He put the sound of the other actors inside my helmet. It just struck me that it was the first time I'd heard anybody's voice in, almost 2 years.
Capcom, go. Remote command,
go.
Recovery,
go.
Secondary recovery,
go.
Pilot,
go. I just went. But it happened because of Ridley, and it surprised me. I don't think it surprised Ridley.
And he said, I just lost it. Was that too much? I said, no, that was perfect, dude. But that's him. That's him.
There's a thing that happens at the end of The Martian where he's sitting in the park and he looks down between his feet and he sees that little plant growing out through the cracks. That's all my dad. He sees beauty and everything.
This little green stalk growing out of gravel, that could be Ridley Scott. Nothing is going to stop that guy. He's going to make a lot more movies. I'm just hoping I'm in them.
Coming up on Journey to the Oscars, a surprising take on this year's Oscar races, when the special edition of 2020 continues. Welcome back to a special edition of 2020. We promised you an insider's look at the races, and we're going to deliver. Krista Smith is the Vanity Fair West Coast editor. It's wide open.
This year, it is just anybody's guess.
How about for Best Picture? What do you see for that?
Well, I think this has been the most exciting race that the Oscars has had for Best Picture in a very long time.
It could have been you. It could have been me. It could have been any of us.
Now, Spotlight, it's a classic American story about journalism done right, and it has a lot of heart. Then all of a sudden, The Big Short, loaded with movie stars.
I love my job.
You hate your job. It takes on something that's so contemporary. You've got The Revenant. It feels epic, it feels important. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead, and audiences are loving it.
All I had was our boy, and you took him from me, you understand?
Those are the films that I think it's going to boil down to, one of those three.
You bring up Leo. It's his time?
I feel the momentum is in his favor. This is his 6th nomination. But this being the Oscars, I would never say there's anything like a sure thing. You've got Michael Fassbender, who is amazing, and Steve Jobs. Eddie Redmayne, he won last year. It's a great group of actors.
Let's talk about the women.
What's really exciting to see is a whole new generation of young actresses coming up. I mean, Saoirse Ronan's fantastic. She was nominated as a teenager for Atonement 7 years earlier. I think no one can argue that Brie Larson is Hollywood's it girl of the moment. It could be interesting to see if one of these young girls becomes a household name.
All right, Krista, thank you for your insight, and we'll be watching Sunday to see if you're right. Be sure to watch as Chris Rock hosts the 88th Academy Awards. I'm Robin Roberts, and I'll see you on the red carpet. Good night.